For a lot of people, the Christian faith, what would you say it feels like to them? Like if you could describe it in one word, what would you describe? Not you. I'm talking culture. What would you say it would be described as? Oh, you're like, you're making me. You're supposed to talk, right? I'm not supposed to think. What do you think it would be described as? A lot of work. Boring. No fun. Hypocrites. Okay. Judgment. That's a good one. Diversity. Okay. Yeah, I agree with that. Yep. To me, I would call it weighty. I would say that it would feel like, well, I was going to do this illustration, and I got a pulled muscle right in the middle of my back right now, and so I didn't want to make that worse. But I was going to come out here holding 2 salt bags, on my shoulders, and that's what it feels like to a lot of people. Is that when they come into the church, when they come to know who Jesus is, what we teach them is that these are the things that you've got to do in order to receive Christ, or these are the things, this is the process that you need to go through in order to grow as a Christian, right? How many of you have been through some sort of a process in order to become a Christian, right? Yeah, so there is this thing, and if it is not done with the right understanding, what it feels like is we've just loaded a ton of bricks on their back and on their shoulders that they have to walk around with. And this is, honestly, I'll be point blank honest with you, is that I'm thankful that I grew up in the church. Very thankful. Many of you don't have that same testimony. I'm thankful that I have been able to spend my entire life in the church. I stole quarters from it. I did some things that were wrong because of it, but thankfully I had people around me that taught me because of that, and now I'm famous because you guys still give me quarters sometimes walking out, and you're like, you don't have to steal it from the offering plate today. So I'm thankful for that, but I'm also troubled by that in a way. And I think that's what drives me to some degree as a minister today. Because there's a lot of things that, despite my upbringing in the church, that I didn't fully understand. Part of that is maturity and growing in reasoning and logic and being able to have foresight. Like, what is it, 25 before your brain's fully developed? So I'm 28, so that just happened 3 years ago. You guys are like, yeah, why are we here today? So you have these, you can call it a lot of different things, but the one thing that I'm really bothered by that I didn't understand was the gospel and the sweetness of it. I didn't understand. I was in ministry and I didn't fully understand the arc of the gospel and what that is. I was teaching teenagers that this is the gospel and this is what you have to do in order to love Jesus. And what I was teaching them, ultimately I'm ashamed of, because it was no gospel at all, what Galatians would call it. Because I attached certain things to it. I attached works. I attached, you don't look like a Christian, so you're not a Christian. That was kind of the way that it went about that. Now, for teenagers, again, their brains are not fully developed. So in some ways, that was helpful because it gave them strong boundaries. And God was able to bestow upon me such a grace that in the last year, we had like 12 kids were baptized before the Rising ultimately formed. And that was something that God did despite my ignorance, despite my misunderstanding in a lot of that. There were times that I would see people break into tears in worship and during teaching and different things like that. And I would look at them because they didn't fully understand. I would look at them and go like, man, somebody needs attention today, don't they? It's judgmental, it's critical, it's wrong. I'm just point blank telling you that. But that's the way I looked at them. And I just was like, it's Jesus. Like, just sing. Just do what you're supposed to. Like, I don't understand this emotional component to it. There was a time that I led worship with another guy at a Bible club. We called it Frogs. Yeah. That gets high schoolers excited. Come be a frog with us, right? Yeah. We didn't have a ribbit chant, right? That would have been awesome. Why didn't we do that, Mike? Why didn't we get in a circle and be like, ribbit, ribbit? I don't know. Anyway, that's exactly. Anyway, the acronym was Friends Relying on God. And so we were a part of a Bible club called Frogs. I led worship with another guy named Andrew. And there was one time, I remember this very clearly, and it still kind of affects me today. We were leading worship, and after the worship set, like he was, sobbing. Here's another guy, like he's sitting there sobbing, and like people are coming around him, like, are you okay? And he's like, I just feel the presence of the Lord. And I'm like, what? Like I'm like, I don't understand it. How many of you have been there with other Christians? Like, I don't understand what you're feeling right now. Like, what it looks like to me is that somebody really needs a little bit of attention. That's what it felt like to me. Now, it may feel like something different to you, but I'm sitting there going, I don't understand this faith. I don't understand what you're trying to do. I don't understand the model of this. I don't understand why you feel that way. I walked out rolling my eyes at him. Judgmental. It was critical. Ultimately, it was sin. But I was ignorant. Absolutely ignorant. And it would be years later, as I'm in my basement studying, that God finally would open my eyes to the true nature of His gospel and would allow me to understand what it is that He's done for me, what He's done for us, what He's done for the world. And those salt bags of religion, of to-do lists, of what it means to look like a Christian, they fell off. And all of a sudden, there was a sweetness to faith that I still grapple with. There's days that I still want to prove myself to God, and then there's other days where I don't really care. You ever been there? You have those days? Wake out of bed, I don't really care today. Grumpy, wrong side of the bed. Yeah. So you still fight back and forth dealing with that, but I want to talk about faith today. I want to bring this around full circle. We're gonna today's kind of, we're starting to wrap up this 12-week long series on a teaching of holiness that has been ultimately grueling. Because this concept, I could teach for a year on this whole concept, but you're already fatigued on the topic. I know that, because I am. But it is one of the hinge pins of what we're trying to do, is to be holy, because God said, I am holy, so you need to be holy. And so what faith is to have a pursuit of holiness. To be, Christian faith is to pursue God, to pursue the morality of God. I understood, in that time before God opened my eyes, I understood that I was a sinner. I got that point. But what I heard was that you're evil, now go clean it up. You're wicked in nature, so now you got to stop it. Now you got to go do things to stop it. So read your Bible, learn what God has to say, and then stop it. Stop it, stop it, stop it, fix it, fix it, fix it. That's what I heard people teach me. Now, whether that was actually what they were trying to convey or what I was interpreting it as, I'm not really sure. I can't transport back in time and go up to them later and go, what did you mean by that? I can't be inquisitive on that whole thing. So I will willingly admit that it wasn't what I wanted to hear at that point, and maybe for whatever reason God was holding me in that. But I'm generally a rule follower by nature. I'm a goody two-shoes. I was a goody two-shoes kid until middle of high school. I got all A's through 8th grade, I think. 8th grade, I failed algebra. And that was the beginning of the end when I realized grades didn't really matter in high school. You just needed to pass the class in order to get to the next thing. Once you got your diploma, the colleges didn't care. I wasn't excited about scholarships. I wasn't excited about college. So those kinds of things were not really on my radar. And I definitely wasted some opportunities in that. But it was interesting throughout time dealing with this faith. Because I would stack weight on my shoulders and I would carry it with me, getting confused about how Jesus could say, come to me all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. I didn't understand how Jesus could do that. Faith felt heavy. It felt like a burden. And honestly, it felt wrong. It felt very wrong. That's because what I had the machine put together wrong. It'd be like trying to put gasoline in an exhaust pipe and expecting your car to run. Right? You ever tried to do that? Most of the time it's an explosion, but that is what effectually my faith was, is trying to pour gasoline in my exhaust pipe and expecting it to go out the other way and to run in my car. And I think a lot of people have their faith built this way. They have all the right components, but the fuel is from the wrong source. It is not going in the right place. They don't understand what's going on, and it's just not going to run. It's just not going to happen. In fact, you might end up with destruction in the end if you do not understand how the pieces are able to fit together. So here's what I didn't understand, is that obedience for obedience sake is simply obedience. There is no holiness in obedience. Obedience for obedience sake is simply obedience. I could obey my parents and God might like that. I could obey the laws of the road and God might like that. I could obey my boss at work, obey my teachers. God might like that. I could obey God directly out of the scriptures and God might like that. I could obey the best as I possibly could, as humanly possible, and never have faith. Never have faith. Hebrews 11:1 says this, now faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. Faith is defined using these two words, assurance and conviction. Faith is the assurance of things hoped for and the conviction of things not seen. Now, let's look at those real quick. Assurance. I assure you that next Sunday, I will be here to worship with you. You have an assurance from me that I'm going to be here next Sunday to worship with you again. Bigfoot existence is not something you can be sure of, right? There are people right now in Lapeer, apparently there's bears walking around the area. Have you guys heard that yet? There are some sightings in Columbiaville and I think... What's that? Could be Jeff. Bear costume, something going on. I don't know. Okay. So, that's awesome. We're going to get a bear costume for Jeff and just make him look like Bigfoot. It's not something you can be sure of. Like there is, the Loch Ness Monster, Bigfoot, all these things that people have supposedly seen, but we know that our eyes can play tricks on us, right? It could have been Bigfoot sighting, could have been a bear, right? Could have been. Just a really skinny bear that needed to eat some more berries for winter, right? Bigfoot's existence might, in fact, be Jeff in the woods walking around in a bear suit, right? It could be. It could be a species of animal that we haven't even found. We're still discovering new animals today, I mean, that it could be. And we might actually name it Bigfoot at some point. But it's not some weird mythological being of some sort walking around the woods. There may be evidence, there may be a Discovery Channel program of a bunch of people that they parade on there saying, yes, I saw a Bigfoot. And that might create inside that you are like, yeah, I think Bigfoot's real. I think I'm going to go look for him. And it might push you to do some of those things. But ultimately, there is no assurance that Bigfoot is real. What there is assurance of is that a bear is real. That Jeff is real, right? We have firsthand accounts, so we can prove those things. There is an assurance of those things. Belief is something entirely different than faith. It's an opinion formed with emotion or little to no evidence. More and more today, there's actually being research done that especially my generation and the ones that are coming behind it, we speak in terms of, well, I feel like this is the way it is. When I hear somebody say that, I'll admit I use those terms. But when I hear somebody say that? What question comes to mind when you hear somebody say those words? I feel like the sky is blue today. What makes you, yeah, exactly. What makes you feel that way? Like, did you just wake up today and go, yeah, I want the sky to be blue today? Or is it blue? Is it blue today or is it not blue today, right? I don't care what you feel like it is. What is the truth? What is the fact, right? So assurance is something that is hard evidence. It is something, at least somebody's given their word. We rarely do deals today with a handshake and only by our word because we distrust each other, right? But with God, what we've been revealed in the Bible is that we can trust what He says. We can trust that He is never going to lie to us. We can trust all those kinds of things. And so we can have assurance from Him that when He promises something, He's going to follow through with that. Faith comes by this assurance or these promises. It also comes by conviction. The Greek word in this context is rendered conviction. But if you take it and you peel away all the other words that are around it, this word, this root word, by itself literally means proof or proving. And that's significant for a reason. Because when I am proving something to you, what does that indicate? That you don't fully believe it yet, right? That there is something, it's an ongoing process of proving something to you. It carries with this idea of ongoing demonstration. So it's just not factual words or logical sounds coming out of your mouth. What it is this conviction is actually more valuable. It carries with it action. It carries with it the idea of action. It gets things done. And so when I am truly convicted by my faith, what it means is I am moved to action. When I'm truly convicted of something, I get up off the couch and I do something about it, right? We've all felt conviction when the little puppy dogs come on TV and they're like, please donate money to this animal shelter to save these pets from being euthanized, right? Or worse yet, when the kids from third world countries come on TV and they parade the skinniest ones looking, and they're like, donate to our cause, right? And you feel that inside. You feel this conviction rise up and you're just like, and we can react to that one of two ways. We can change the channel or we get up off the couch and we write a check and we send it off in the mail, right? Is that music? Yeah, it is that music. This kind of conviction is strong enough to get me up off the couch and doing something. And so Christian faith is the combination of an assurance and a conviction. That we've been given a revelation of a God who loves us and who wants what's best for us, but also who numbers the hairs on our heads, who pays attention to us, who wants us to enter into covenant with us, to display His glory in all that we come in contact with. You see, in the Scriptures, God has revealed to us His character. He's shown to us who He is, what we should and what we should not expect from Him. What stirs up His wrath and what moves Him to compassion. We find promises of His intentions, both in our lives and in the universe, and none of it contradicts science. That's the cool thing about it. None of it contradicts science. Through the Bible, through God's Word, we have assurance, we have promises of things hoped for, hope for life, hope for eternity in heaven, hope for a restored relationship with God, and through a right application of those Scriptures, through a right application of those kinds of things in our lives, by putting on its teaching, we find that faith ultimately is then produced. We find that there's a better way to think, a more sober way to think. We discover ways to see life that we had not previously seen before. We mature, we become convinced of things that we cannot see. A lot of times people will automatically judge the church and say there's good people in there, or there should be good people in there. And when they find out there's not good people in there, they're appalled, right? Now, I'm not calling you not good. I'm just saying that we all got our issues, right? Yeah, we got our problems. So something's not right. It's backwards, isn't it? It's a little bit different. It's when these things come together and underscored with trust that you see faith flourish. And I want to illustrate this concept of faith with you. I need Ken's help real quick. I need you to come on up here, buddy. You're not catching anything. No. Okay. So I'm going to ask you a question. Do you trust me?
Me?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Oh.
He's going to catch me. I know you're
He says, no, I'm not going to catch you. I'm not going to catch you. Do you have faith in me?
What situation?
I don't know. In general, do you have faith in me?
Yes, I do.
That I'm gonna make sure that you're not gonna get hurt. I didn't give him much of a heads. I just told him I need you to use you during the service, and he was like, "Okay."
Well, I trust a lot of people.
You trust a lot?
I get to know you.
Yeah.
So I know you now, so I trust you. So yeah, I would depend. On
Okay.
faith.
Sounds good. I need you to take off your glasses and put on a blindfold then.
I don't need to now.
Here, I'll let you put it on. You're capable of putting one on. I'm gonna trust you. Not like that, buddy.
That's how I wear them.
I know. I got a neat little nose thingy there too for you. He looks kind of ninja-like now, right? All right. So I'm not gonna spin around 3 times. I'm not gonna let you fall. You trust me, right?
Yeah.
All right. That was 3 times. All right, good. So what I'm going to do, what I'm going to have you do, you know which way you're facing, don't you?
Yeah, congregation.
Yeah, okay. You can think that. So Ken, I'm going to stand in one place, and I'm going to pick one right now. Let's see. I'm going to move some things out of the way so that I don't hurt you. At least make you think I'm not going to hurt you. So basically what I want you to do is just listen to my command. Don't get rammy on me, okay? But I want you to do everything that I say.
All right.
Okay? Simple?
Right.
All right. Sounds good. I want you to take 3 steps forward. All right. I want you to turn 90 degrees to your left and take 1 step forward. Okay? Now, about face to 180. That's okay. I'm trying to a little bit. Nope, there's a music stand. See, you're not hurt yet. I told you I wouldn't hurt you. Okay? Now walk forward 1 step. Do 1 more step. Sounds good. Now turn again to your left. Good. Take 5 steps that way. Go a little to your left. Yep, there you go. Good. Now turn around 180 degrees, face the other way. Do you know where you're at yet? Kind of? Okay. Now I want you to take 6 steps forward. Okay. Now turn again to your left. Take 2 steps forward. Now I want you to sit down. Hesitated, didn't you?
Well, it's short.
Did you hear the chair behind you at all?
Yes.
Yes. Darn it!
I heard somebody clear the throat over there, too.
Yeah, that's the way it works. But still, you didn't know that the chair was going to be there, did you?
No.
No. Did that take a little bit of faith?
Yeah.
Yeah. How many of you guys would have sat down right away? I don't know, right? Yeah, exactly. Okay, you can take the blindfold off. Thank you, sir. Give him a round of applause. Thank you, buddy. It takes faith to do certain things in life, especially when you don't trust people, right? Now, how many of you have ever had the similar experience where God has said go, and you're like, I'm not really sure, right? You can walk around all you want. But to go where God has asked you to go, especially when you can't see what the future is going to hold, is something very unique. It's something very difficult. Now, Ken knows that he can beat me up, so if I would have hurt him, it would have been an issue. So there's a little bit of a difference going on there, right? But this is what faith is, and I found this from a Sunday school kids lesson, which I thought was pretty cool. They defined faith like this. Faith is not being able to see, but trusting in the one who can. Faith is not being able to see, but trusting in the one who can see. Hebrews 11 is sometimes referred to as the Faith Hall of Fame. And I want to take you there today. I want to talk about Abraham a little bit. The author there has listed a number of people that had extraordinary faith throughout the Scriptures, throughout time. They're revered for their faith. And Abraham is one of the guys in that Hall of Fame. And there's a good reason for it. In verse 8 of chapter 11, it says, "By faith, Abraham obeyed when he was called to go out to a place that he was to receive as an inheritance. And he went out not knowing where he was going." It doesn't sound like much, right? You read that and it's really easy to kind of glance over that. Like God called Abraham out from a place to go to another place. He didn't know where he was going. So it doesn't, it isn't like God called him to jump off a cliff and angels came down and rescued him, right? It's not that kind of a situation. He wasn't even talking about the situation where he was asked to sacrifice his son. What he said here was, Abraham obeyed by faith when God called him out of his land and go to another one that he didn't know where it was at. Let me give you some background on what's happening. Let's describe what's going on. We're first introduced to Abraham in Genesis chapter 12. His name was Abram at that time. God had a habit of calling people out of their former lives and then changing their names and introducing them to a whole new life. And so this is kind of an interesting thing. But at this point, he's called Abram. I'm going to probably just refer to him as Abraham the whole time to cut out confusion, if that's okay with you. All right? But he changed his name. And so Genesis chapter 12, verse 1, it says, "Now the Lord said to Abram, 'Go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you. And I will make of you a great nation. And I will bless you and make your name great so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and him who dishonors you I will curse. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed.'" And so in verse 4, we actually learn that Abraham is 75 years old at this point. Right? He's 75, and God was asking him to do a few things. The first thing that God was asking him to do was he specifically called him from his country, from his extended family, his kindred, and from his father's house. At the age of 75, God said, "Get up, leave this place. Leave everything that you know. Leave behind the routines of your family. Leave behind the comforts of the city. Leave behind what you know, who you are, the security of work, the security of the city. Leave it all behind." And if you read a little bit further into Genesis 12, you see that he went and he pitched his tent. He left a house to go live in a tent. So what we're going to do this week, in order to act out what this scripture is teaching, I'm going to ask you all for this week, we're all going to get a tent, and we're going to go camp out in the woods for a week, because God called us to. I already hear that. I don't think it's going to happen. No. Would you do it if God spoke to you?
Not if there's bears.
Or Bigfoot.
Explains the shirt color.
Wow. So, think about that for a second. Would you do that? Today, would you do that? Walk away from your job? Walk away from the comforts of your home? Walk away from your family and be like, yeah, God told me I need to go away. Well, where are you going? I don't know. But God told me I got to go. So I'm going to take a tent and I'm going to go. Do you know the looks you would get? Okay, good luck. I'll see you in a little while because you ain't lasting very long, right? The idea is that he got up and he went and he did this at the age of 75. At the age of 75, he was leaving behind a lot. And I don't know about you, but as the years go by, I don't like change more and more and more, right? I don't enjoy change. I like routine. I don't like people changing things on me, right? So I can imagine some of you are probably in the same boat, right? What God asked this man to do at the age of 75 was change everything about his life, is to get up, go, leave. God basically did the equivalent of picking him up and throwing him in a lake saying swim, right? That's ultimately what he did. And so God said he's going to show him the land, but there was no instruction of what road to take, where to turn, how to get there. God was specific. He said, lead this, and then vague, and then he said, go into a land that you don't know about yet. I'm not going to give you a GPS. I'm not going to give you a map. I'm just going to tell you to go, and I'm going to show you along the way. The third thing that God points out here, or that we can see here, is that God states what he's trying to accomplish. He says, and I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great, so that you will be a blessing. In you, all of the families of the earth shall be blessed. And so God promises Abraham, he says, go, leave, go to a place I'm going to show you. You don't know where it's at yet, but go to this place I'm going to show you. And along the way, I'm going to give you purpose. I'm going to give you protection. I'm going to give you life along the way. Can you imagine God telling you that? Like, that would be exciting and super scary all at the same time. Like, it'd be so cool, but it'd be so, like, I don't know if I can do this and all that kind of stuff. But he says, I'm going to make you a great nation. I'm going to bless you and make your name great. You're going to be a blessing, such a blessing that every family in the world is going to be blessed because of you. Like, that's kind of cool, isn't it? Like, every family, the families you like, the families you don't like, the families that are born tomorrow, and the families that are going to be born in, like, 3,000 years from now. I'm going to bless everyone through you. That's pretty awesome. We have the fortunate side of things that we can look, and we're able to live on this side of time. We can see what God was up to. Abraham had no idea what God was up to at this point. But he couldn't see it at this point, but we're fortunate enough to see that God was starting a new nation. He was starting the nation of Israel through Abraham. Okay? And the new nation would be called out from the world, and they would receive a special purpose. And God didn't just take the Canaanites and say, you're going to be my people. Right? He didn't just pick someone that was already existing. That's not God's style. What God tries to do, part of God's character, is he calls you out from the world and he says, this is the way I want you to do things. And so in the fashion of God, in his character, what he says to Abraham is, I want you to come out of the world that you're in, and I'm going to develop you into a new nation. You can't see it yet, and if I told you, you'd be scared to death, so you're not going to find out yet. And I'm going to send you on this path to become a brand new nation, the nation of Israel. He didn't modify an existing one. He called them out. And he said, it begins with you. Leave the world, live as a stranger in it, and follow me wherever I lead you. Now this is faith. The fact that Abraham got up and followed. This is faith. But what did he have? He had assurance, and he had conviction. The assurance came in the form of a promise of life and protection and purpose. Conviction was the fact that God was speaking to him. I mean, I don't think you can get much better than that, right? That's God just being audible in your life. And so Abraham had faith. It came by way of assurance and conviction, and Abraham trusted. He believed. And so the author of Hebrews is noting his faith. And in verse 8, I'm going to read this again. It says, by faith Abraham obeyed when he was called to go out to a place that he was to receive an inheritance. And he went out, not knowing where he was going. Now, I want to point out, Abraham obeyed. How did Abraham obey? Take you back to grammar class. How did he obey? By faith. It was by faith that Abraham obeyed. That is incredibly important. Something happened before Abraham obeyed. He didn't just walk up to a light switch and flick it on, right? What has to happen before you're able to turn on a light? I have a light switch here. I would love to be able to take this light switch out of my pocket and be like, boop, and all the lights go off, right? Wouldn't that be awesome? Like, I think technology is going to get to that point. Like, we're going to actually be able to just, like, you can already do that with your phones. I'm sure we're going to be able to just think that, and it's just going to, at some point, but maybe we won't live to see that day. But wouldn't it be awesome if I could just click it on and click it off? No. But it doesn't work that way, does it? What has to happen? Has to be hooked up to electricity, right? We gotta do something before something can come in to turn on the light, right? Even if this was already hooked up to a light, even if I had this controlled to that light right there, somebody would still have to come along and run a wire out to the breaker box, whichever one you want to pick in this building, and somebody else would have to run lines from the power company to this building, right? Something had to happen in order to connect it to the power source before I can sit here and when I tell you to turn on the light and you go over to the switch and say, okay, I obeyed. Turn on the light, but nothing happened. See where I'm going with this? When the work is combined, when it's combined with the power from this, when obedience to how to turn on a light is combined with the work that's been done to get a line run from the power company to this building to the light switch, it is at that point that my obedience ends up turning on the light. Obedience for obedience sake is just obedience. Something has to happen in order for faith to work, in order for faith to be powerful, in order for God to work in your life. Something has to happen before obedience happens. Somebody took a roll of wire, they snaked it through the wall, they connected to the switch and to the light, and it was produced. Obedience on its own is great for keeping order, for making someone seem honorable and morally healthy, but on its own it earns you the grave and nothing more. Before Abraham obeyed, he had faith. Faith is the source of power to his obedience. He wasn't able to see, he trusted the one who could. Does that make sense? He wasn't able to see where he was going, but he trusted the one who could. And so he got up. And because he had assurance and conviction, because God did the work in giving him a promise, giving him something in order that he could have faith, he was able to get up and realize the promise that God gave him. Faith is not being able to see, but trusting in the one who can. If there's something that I hope you hear from this message today, it's that faith is not a plan of action. It's not a law. It's not obedience. Holiness is not produced in simply being obedient. There is a component, as we've talked about self-discipline. There is a component of believing. There is a component of self-control. There are components of us knuckling down and saying, let's get to business, because it's required. But the power that comes from that obedience is through faith. The source of faith is not found in the church. It's not found on TV. It's not found in reciting certain words. It's not in prayers. It's not in your effort. The source of faith is so much more important than where you are or even what you're doing or where you're going in life. The source of faith is God. So many times we look at God and we question, what is your plan? What is your plan? I feel lost in life. I feel like I'm spinning in circles. And I've been there before. I've been there before. And now when I hear someone talk about God's plan, I just kind of smile at them. Nicely. I don't look at them like, you're an idiot. I just smile. And I get excited because I get a chance to talk to them about the gospel. Right? Here, talk about God's plan. I don't know what God's plan is for my life. I just don't know where He's going. I don't know where He's taking me. I don't know what's up. I wish I could just see what God's plan was in my life, and I just smile. I'll wait till you're done. Can I tell you something about God's plan? I get the pull. I get the desire to know where God is leading, where God is going, what He's doing in life. I want to know. I like to be in control. I like to see what's coming ahead of me. But what that is it's doubt. What that is logic trying to weigh in. It's what that is trying to figure out God's plan. It's trying to take control of an already perfect process. Because we don't necessarily understand it. Your faith will not increase because you see the blueprint for your life. Do you understand that? In fact, it'll probably scare you. Like if you could see what God was doing in your life 10 years from now, you'd probably look at it and be like, I'm out of here, right? I know if that was the case for me, I would have never been down this path. I would not be before you today. There were people when I was young telling me, you're going to be a preacher someday. I'd be like, yeah, right. I hate getting up in front of people. And if God would have said, I would have probably left the church and been like, that is not where I'm going. And been a whole Jonah situation, going on in a boat and getting thrown in and getting swallowed up by a whale, right? Yeah. Isn't that true for some of you? If you knew where God was leading you, it's exciting at this point, but 5 years ago, with the mind that you had, then what you knew, you'd be like, yeah, I'm out. There ain't no way. I'm going down this. Seeing a blueprint for your life is not going to increase your faith or make you trust the Lord any more than what you do now. In fact, it may do more to counter it because our minds, our logic are not God's mind or logic. It's not by understanding that we have faith. It's by faith that we'll find strength and motivation for obedience in the Lord. It's through this faith that God operates. Romans chapter 4, verses 13 and 14 says, this is the Apostle Paul talking. He says, for the promise to Abraham and his offspring, that he would be the heir of the world, did not come through the law. In other words, it didn't come through him trying to be righteous or trying to measure up in life, not trying to do everything right. The promise of his offspring that he would be heir of the world did not come through the law, but through the righteousness of faith. For it is the adherents of the law if it is the adherents of the law who are to be the heirs, faith is null and the promise is void. What it's saying is that if you want a plan of action, God's given you a plan of action, but you've already messed that up. You've already messed that up. We're all sinners who've fallen short of God's holiness. And God knew this in His infinite wisdom, and so 400 years before He even gave the law of Moses, before He gave us the 10 Commandments, it was faith that was counting Abraham as righteous. You can look that up. Paul says it in Romans. It was counted to him as righteousness. This means that at that point, God was handing out salvation by way of faith rather than by law, and He didn't even have Jesus to believe in at that point. It was counted to him as righteousness, not because of what he did, but because of what God was doing. I want to tell you a story. Horatio Spafford was a devout Christian, a successful lawyer and a businessman in Chicago who married a woman named Anna. And they had 5 children together. He was a real estate investor who had bought many different properties along the Lake Michigan shoreline. In 1871, this is how long ago he lived, in 1871, tragedy struck his family and their young son died of pneumonia. That same year, Horatio lost much of his business in the Great Chicago Fire overnight. Lost his business, lost his income, lost everything. As you can imagine, it would have been a tough couple of years for building the business and recovering from the death of a child. And so in 1873, 2 years later, Horatio planned for his family to travel to Europe on vacation and actually to do a little bit of mission work. And something came up last minute in Chicago, and Horatio had to stay behind. But he sent his family on along to enjoy the trip without him, and he would catch up a few days later when his business dealings were done. On November 22nd, the ship that Horatio's family on collided with an English vessel and sank in 12 minutes flat. Days later, the survivors landed in Wales, and Anna, his wife, sent back a telegram to her husband and said these 2 words, saved alone. Her kids had perished in the sinking of the ship. 3 years, 5 kids. As you can imagine, Horatio would get a ticket for the next available ship and left to join his grieving wife in Europe. As the ship was 4 days out, the captain called Horatio to his cabin and told him, we're over the place where your children went down. And it's said that he went back to his cabin and he wrote these following words. He says, when peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul. My sin, oh the bless of the glorious thought, my sin not in part but the whole, is nailed to the cross and I bear it no more. Praise the Lord, oh my soul. But Lord, 'tis for thee, for thy coming we wait. The sky, not the grave, is our goal. O trump of the angel, O voice of the Lord, blessed hope, blessed rest of my soul. And Lord, haste the day when the faith shall be sight. The clouds will be rolled back as a scroll. The trump shall resound and the Lord shall descend. Even so, it is well with my soul. I can tell you this, is that faith got Horatio up the next morning. You cannot lose 5 kids in 3 years. You cannot lose your business in the midst of those 3 years and wake up the next morning and say, it is well with my soul. Faith is what empowers a mother and a father to extend forgiveness to another human being after being brutally shot and killed. He killed their kids in school. Faith is what fuels the fire of a family rocked by sneak attack sin. Faith is what gives the cancer patient the hope that that whether or not they wake up tomorrow breathing, they will in fact wake up. Faith is what gives a wife the ability to look at her unconscious husband and find hope. Faith is what drives burly men to love their wives tenderly and to cherish them as Christ cherishes the church. Faith is what pushes caring, compassionate women to their knees in prayers for their husbands and for their children. Faith is what causes a teenage girl to confess Christ when staring down the barrel of a shotgun in the middle of her school as death is apparent and rampant. Faith is what allows us to let go of loved ones, giving hope that we'll see them again one day. Faith is what drives us up off the couch into the wilderness to blaze new trails in order that people might find Jesus Christ and the gospel. Faith is knowing that our God is above the circumstances, that our God is sovereign and in control, and our God is good and He is mighty to save from all sin, from all corruption, from all unrighteousness, no matter whether it's coming from the inside or from someplace on the out. You don't got to worry about the next election. My God is in control. You don't got to worry about the corruption going on in Flint. My God is in control. You don't have to worry about whether or not your house is going to burn down today because my God is in control. How dare we turn faith into something that we can do? Faith is not obedience. Faith is much greater than where we stand or where we're going. What is faith is not being able to see, but trusting in the one who does. Think about it. What would have happened if Abraham had said, yeah, no thanks, I don't want to do this. You didn't pick somebody else to go ahead and do this. Number one, I don't think God would have let that happen. But number two, a lot of things would have been different. If somebody would have said to God, no, I don't think so, then what is being missed out on? There are days that I know that God has called me, what He's called me to. There are days that I know the purpose that He's given me. I know the righteousness ascribed to me. I know the rescue effort that has been mounted for my soul. And some days I still want to stay on the couch. Don't you? Football game's on. God, not right now. Right? We're going to Lucky's tonight. Not right now. God, I'm tired. I want to sleep. Not right now. Are you willing to take the risk that God's got something incredible, some incredible opportunity for you. Something incredible for you to do to advance His glory, to grow beyond where you are today. When you realize that opportunity, are you willing to stay on the couch and let it pass you by? You look at faith just like I did, and you see weight, you see a burden, you see exhaustion. And if I could just offer you any encouragement, it's going to be one word: stop. That's not faith. Faith is not in your obedience. Faith is not what you've done. You are not what you do. You have an opportunity to be called into God's family, to be a child of God, to be rescued by Him, to be considered righteous before Him. Even though you don't feel like it, God has said that in your faith, in your confession, in your repentance, in your trust, I will make you whole again. Just let the weight fall. Release yourself of this performance, because you're not helping anything. In fact, you're probably hurting yourself. God has called us all to a purpose, to be fearfully and wonderfully made. We are all still sinners, but our identity is not what we've done. It's not the wrong turns we've made. It's not the bad decisions. 2 Corinthians says this in chapter 5, verse 17. It says, if anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. The old has passed away. Behold, the new has come. I don't know what you're dealing with today. I don't know if you came in thinking that this was a part of your faith and doing this was a result and you'd get more faith points in your bank. That's not the point. I'm inviting you to know who Jesus is, to know the righteousness that has been ascribed to you, the war effort that has been waged for your soul. Being here today specifically just to check a box off on the list is not the point. I want you to be able to worship and say, it is well with my soul. That no matter what happens, God, you've taken my sin, you've nailed it to a tree. And because of that, I will worship you, I will trust you. You've demonstrated the best love that has ever been possible. It is well with my soul.